You guys ever just start those Lego mocks that you feel like are going to be really, really smart, and they start with really, really big, complex ideas? And then as you trying to look through pieces and find out what you'd like to use, it starts slowly whittling down from a really good idea to something that's not as great, and you end up with a build that's kind of mediocre based off the big idea you had at the beginning. Well, in short, that's this showcase today. I worked on this project quite a while ago. It's kind of an old one in contrast to my other things. I'm not sure if I even really like it or if I'll be making a tutorial on it, but I figure for just the learning experience, and I figure people still might want to see it, I think I'm going to feature it here. So here we are. This is an old mock that I made based off a couple different things actually, but I figure I might just still feature it because I think that even if I don't like it, maybe other people might. And even if other people don't like it, I probably can learn something from kind of making something that is not as good as some of the other things that I make. This is my 1915 World War I armored car. It is custom original design and not inherently based off of any specific car. But yeah, this is it. It's got some weird shapes on it, some weird accessories, and I just want to make a quick video kind of just going into the details and taking a quick look at it. Again, I'm not sure if I will build tutorials on it, but I might. Haven't decided yet. Well, let's get right into what we have to see here. This was based off a couple different ideas. I won't go too in depth because they're kind of boring as far as the design of this thing goes. It's surprisingly straightforward, which, like I said in the beginning, was kind of a disappointment almost. I was looking at cars that were built in 1915, sort of civilian cars that were modified for military purposes, near the beginning and the middle of the First World War. I was looking mainly at the Minerva armored car, which had some interesting curvature on it. I believe that was made in Belgium. And then the Rolls-Royce armored car, famously used in the British Army, I believe, in World War I also. And the Lanchester armored car, I think it was what it was called, was another British car. I was looking at a couple of those, wanted to build a very specific car, and then kind of my ideas whittled down as I kind of realized I didn't have perfect pieces for that, and I ended up with this, which I think is okay in contrast of what I could have done just with my pieces. But yeah, I think I'm gonna do what I normally do and just kind of pop off some of the pieces here so we can get a good look at kind of what it is. It's got a very simple exterior, a few fun angles, and then a very simple inside, just sort of generally based off of cars from 1915 and military vehicles in general. So as usual, my lighting is terrible, but we're just gonna roll with it. I have a couple little crates that I used and put on the outside of this car because I made sort of a low just edge here to be able to connect supplies, which was kind of fun. Some very generic looking box shapes just to kind of break up the monotony of the gray. Because I didn't want to do it in gray, I wanted to do it in sort of like a darkish green color, more like this. But I couldn't find the right pieces for it, so I just didn't bother. The boxes kind of help break up the monotony though, and just sort of cover it with a little bit of more interest, I think. I used some textured pieces here. And I have an extra wheel that fits on the other side that's kind of, I don't know if I had an extra tire for this, but I put an extra wheel part on it. And then what looks like it maybe could be some sort of ammo casing or gas can. And these just fit on the outside of this vehicle, kind of on the edges and on the back, just to kind of make it more interesting than it already is. The initial car is just, it's not asymmetric, which I kind of plan to make, but it is just pretty normal rectangle shape with some windows, kind of a steel, a brass nameplate right here for maybe like a company name. The steps to climb in, because I didn't put a door on it, I sealed off all the actual like civilian car parts and put plating on it. An extra light, some little wheel covers, hook for the wheel, another little window, an extra light, some covered wheel covers, a little gas cap thing, cover, you know, the long wheel covers again, a flag. It has these tiny little eye holes that open up, something like some of my tanks. Some of my tanks too have similar functions. I won't open that one, I'm just not gonna bother. But you guys get the idea. It's just a little hinge to be able to look through, and it goes all the way through naturally, and then close in times of battle. And then I did an old style car crank on the front because I was looking at cars from the beginning. I was like sort of around 1915, beginning of the First World War. And some of them still had these cranks on them, and I thought that would be a fun detail to kind of stand it apart and make it look more like it was a period car instead of just some random armored car that I put together. I'll get a better view of the little inside here in just a minute, but we're just gonna take a minute to look at the gun. It's kind of one of my older style World War I machine guns with like the candle end to look like a barrel, and sort of the cooling drums on it, and then it spins all the way around. So aside from that, it's not tremendously more interesting than that. It's about a very, very simple base, very, very simple build. It's just sort of castle blocks stacked up, with the only interesting part being kind of this sideways facing curvature right here. But again, I think I could have done better with this one. I didn't work on it too tremendously long. I kind of just whipped it together, and I had bigger plans for it, but they ultimately kind of fell through. So I stripped some of the wall pieces away just to give a little idea of what the inside of this little actual like driver's cab is. And you can kind of see more of the hood of the car and kind of just what it looks like. There's just a little control stick down there, a steering wheel, a pedal down there. It's a very simple cab, built kind of similar to how some of my other tank cabs are made, with a jumper plate to keep the guy's arm away from the wall. And then there's just this little step raised area for the guy who operates the gun. It somewhat comfortably fits 2 guys. I don't think you can maybe cram more in there if you removed the gun or used it as a personnel carrier, but I just didn't bother because, again, this mock is not as good as I think it could have been. But here's the little gun mount. It's a little complex, but it really does what it needs to do. And it actually rotates around really nicely without getting in the way too much or hitting like the driver on the head or anything like that. It's got a little gun shield and stuff too. Again, things that are somewhat simple, but I think I could have done better with. So I think it's still worth the feature, but not as good as maybe some of the other stuff that I've made. But yeah, so that's all for this this particular build. It's not as good as I probably would have made it. And again, I had bigger plans to sort of make it more like some actual iconic and very specific armored cars. And now I sort of came out with a more generic one based off of general armored car ideas from the time period, instead of making one that was more specific. My hopes with featuring this car on my channel is kind of just as a point of reference, because this is the very first armored car I've ever made, believe it or not. I've never tried something like this before. This is the first version of anything like this I've ever built. So when it comes to reference, I would maybe want to think that even if this build is mediocre by my standards, I might be able to look back on it one day and say, hey, I've either built a better armored car, or I could say, hey, this is something that that I built, and I can use it as reference for any other armored cars or armored vehicles in general that I make in the future. So again, like I mentioned, it's mediocre by my standards. I think I could have done better, and I'll kind of continue to reiterate that, because this probably isn't completely up to my code as far as my personal building goes, but I did have a lot of fun building it and experimenting with the idea of a World War I armored car, and I think it looks okay. It looks pretty good. It kind of captures sort of period cars of the time, with the blocky front, and then the kind of chunky front of it, and then this crank and all those things, and the big high wheel covers and the slim wheels. So this is it. This is my my World War I 1915 armored car with my little anti-aircraft, anti-infantry gun right here. But aside from that, that's the end of this video. I'm just putting this out as a point of reference to potentially be able to, you know, build something better and greater from the future. But just in case, I'm going to log this here in case people want to know anything about my building process and kind of how that works. So here it is, just for the watch, just for the entertainment. It is here to be presented.